Hey y'all, it's Gemini Jazz, and I am here with House of Chiron. And today, I didn't plan on doing a video. I try and keep my videos to, whatever I can do, whenever I can do it, but y'all caught me on my lounging day. So I was actually going to create a post in regards to some psychological things, talk a little bit about psychology and the mind and whatnot. So I was going to discuss the id, ego, and superego, which was created by Sigmund Freud. And so I was going to talk about that and then, kind of bring up the connection in spirituality and spiritual movement and whatnot and the work that we do. So first, what is the id? I'm not sure if any of you all know about the id, ego, and the superego, but that's like psychology 101. And so the id basically, it's part of the psyche. So, the psyche is all about your personality and who you are. And so the id, there's three parts. It's the id, the ego, the superego. And the id is basically your instincts, your natural urges, your needs, your desires, all those things. And it can actually operate in an illogical way. It can be irrational. And it's just kind of those, impulses, like, and when children are born, babies, they function solely in the id, right? And if you notice a baby, something happens to them, they don't like it, they cry. You don't see a baby, pondering thought as to how they're going to react to something. They just react, right? You don't see a baby questioning, am I hungry or am I sleepy? That's why it's hard for children to go to sleep, because they're only functioning in the id. They don't process those thoughts. So then there's the ego, right? The ego basically is what I consider the referee between the id and the superego. And so the ego is developed to kind of keep that balance between those urges and those impulses that you have in the id. And then we'll get into the superego in a moment. But it gives you that balance of the unrealistic and the real world kind of views of things. So it basically helps you balance out, your illusions that you have and the irrational thoughts. And so it also can seek pleasure, but at the same time, it seeks pleasure and avoids pain. So it does that, but it also creates kind of like how can I put this? I'm trying to explain it in a way that's not so psychological, scientifically, but it wants pleasure, but and it avoids pain, but it does this in a more realistic approach, right? So it kind of gives you that like you want to obtain that gratification, but realistically. And that is what we normally function in on a day-to-day basis as humans. We function mostly in the ego, and we have all these different things to talk about. The ego is bad, kill the ego, death of the ego, all this other stuff, but we'll get into that in a minute. So anywho, with that being said, we now move on into the superego, right? And so the superego, that is basically like the part that it's your moral values, basically. So that's developed between the ages of 3 and 5. And if you take into consideration around the ages of 3 and 5 years old, what's happening? You are being conditioned by your parents, your society, your surroundings. So the superego is all basically like your moral standards, like what's right and what's wrong. So the id is impulsive. The ego is the balance between being impulsive and being moralistic, right? And so, but they also, the ego is the one in the middle. That's the referee, where you always balance. So Sigmund Freud, he came up with this theory that people with mental illness are in constant battle between the three of these things, right? And so I feel like, my perspective, spiritual wise, that, if you look at the scale of things, the id is the subconscious. So take an iceberg, for example, and this is the example that they give us in school. Take an iceberg, for example. What you see on top is your consciousness. Underneath the water is your subconsciousness. Underneath the water is your id, part of your superego. The ego is on top of the water, as well as part of the superego. So you are always able to see a balance between the ego and the superego, but the unconscious is the id. That's the impulsive reactions and your urges and your desires, the unrealistic things. And so to me, that's the shadow work that we have to do, because you have all of that. You have those things that are happening in you that, your triggers, and that also comes in from your conditioning, and that comes with your superego, because your superego is also underneath that water. And you have to work on those things that are in your subconscious that are not seen. And it's actually bigger. Like the iceberg is way bigger than what it appears to be. Above water, it's, just a little triangle above water, like, oh, okay, that's just a little triangle of ice. But underneath is this massive amount of this glacier, this iceberg underneath. And that's the part that we ignore. And that's the biggest part. So it's kind of like we need to actually focus more on our subconscious. We need to focus more on our shadow work. And, everyone, you hear people say love and light, and I'm all for that when it's time and when it's necessary. But you have to embrace your light, which is above the water, as well as your darkness, which is below the water. You have to actually embrace both to become whole. And so, Sigmund Freud, he was an atheist. He didn't believe in any of that. And so it kind of shows a different perspective of things, on a scientific level. But then if you can bridge the connection with that and actually see on a spiritual level that this is actually beneficial, that you have your shadow work to do. That's in your subconscious. That's your impulses and your desires. And those need to be addressed, and they need to be worked through just as well as everything else above the water. So I was doing a little research, and I was doing a little studying today, and I was actually just going to create like a little simple post about it. It started off as just like a small little template, but I was like, this is going to be way too much to type out. Y'all not going to want to read. So yeah, not all of that, because I talk too much. So yeah, I hope this has been helpful. If y'all have any questions, I would really, really love some feedback and some insight. If y'all have like any questions, if y'all want to have like an open discussion about this, just go ahead and comment below. Maybe I'll open a discussion on my storyline. Who knows? If it starts picking up, maybe I'll do that. But anywho, y'all have a wonderful Tuesday. Talk to you later. Bye.